For today's review, we are looking at Black Manta from the Aquaman Page Puncher wave, and before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card. And as you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of Black Manta. I really like this illustration because it captures how intimidating the character can be sometimes. Pretty cool. And on the backside, you do have your usual read-up for who the character is. His real name is David Hyde, and it reads, considered one of Aquaman's greatest enemies, Black Manta has a singular hatred for the King of Atlantis. Black Manta has always inflicted a special kind of pain upon his archenemy, cementing his reputation as one of the most ruthless and driven supervillains in DC Universe. I really like that description, ruthless and driven. That is exactly who Black Manta is as a character. And that is the data profile card. Now let's move on to the accessories that are included with this figure. And let's start with the arm blades that were equipped to the figure by default in the packaging. And as you can see, this is what they look like. And how they were equipped? Well, as you can see for the bottom, there are pegs right here. They go into the sockets that are present on both of the arms. So there's one on the right arm and one on the left arm. I will show how these look like later in the video. In terms of the overall sculpt of the blades, it's just exactly how you picture a blade to look like. Now, when it comes to the paint details, you could probably paint it better with some sort of silver metallic paint over this dull gray paint that they use. So it just depends on preference. But there are the blade accessories. And in terms of the fictional sort of thing with these, I'm assuming they're supposed to be like retractable arm blades. You know, stuff that we see in a lot of fictional things. So that's probably what they are. Now, in terms of his other accessory, he does come with his version of a trident, or maybe it's not a trident, I don't know what this is, but it is a weapon, a blade sort of, or spear-like weapon, not a blade, like spear-like. And as you can see, the blade part does kind of look like an aquatic sort of blade weapon, which I do like. And then you do have more of these like details, like it's tech base, right? There's tubings right up here. There's all these sort of details that are sculpted onto this sort of weapon. You also have this part right here. I don't even know what this is supposed to be. However, it does reflect his suit color, right? You got the black and the red on here. Like maybe it's like a glowing sort of thing, right? Like energy that flows through this weapon. I'm not too sure, but there's that whole detail. And on the bottom, you do have this sort of blade tip. So overall, very cool looking weapon. Whether this is a spear, a trident, whatever you want to call this thing, it is a fitting accessory and weapon to this version of Black Manta. And it makes a lot of sense why they sculpted it this way. So pretty cool. And that is pretty much all the accessories that he comes with, because I never count, you know, this figure stand because we always get these. And since this is a page puncher, I'm going to move the figure out of the way. He does come with a comic book. And of course, it is the same image that we saw on the data profile card for the cover art. Really cool illustration here. And here is the inside of the comic book. It is just a single issue story where pretty much Black Manta right here in the beginning is making some sort of what is he doing? He's making like some sort of trade with organized crimes for like high-tech weapons and stuff, right? And of course, Aquaman stops this sort of deal from going down, right? He comes in and interferes with the operation, and then you have Black Manta fighting Aquaman, and things get crazy. Then Aqualad and Tempest shows up, and, you know, all this stuff happens. Of course, we got Ocean Master here. That's like a reminiscent of his past, right? Fighting his brother. So pretty much just a very simplistic sort of story, but pretty cool that it's a single issue. And then at the end here, of course, Black Manta gets defeated, and that's how it ends. So, yeah. And of course, they tell you if you want to read more about Aquaman, you got all this stuff over here, right? Actual written stories of the character. And for the back part here, you do have a little ad for Black Adam. That was a long time ago, but there's that whole thing. And that is the comic book. So that is it. You get a single issue with a cover art that shows the character. Not bad. Now let's talk about the aesthetics of this action figure. Let's bring the figure back in. This is a very interesting design Black Manta figure. I remember when this wave was announced, this was the figure that I wanted the most, because I really like how it came out, right? All the details, all the sculpting of it, it's just a really cool looking figure, and I like what they did here. And one thing about these Page Puncher figures that McFarlane made for, a couple waves here is that I think they're supposed to be original design figures, because they're not based on any existing source material. Now, of course, the character is from an existing source material. What I mean is that this entire design here is pretty much a redesign for these figures, right? It's not like, what's the best way to describe it? It's not like some of the Page Punchers we've gotten recently, like, for example, like Starman, Damage, Kingdom Come Superman, where they're directly from an existing source material that's written. Like, this comic book is only with this figure. This comic book didn't exist before. So I really find these particular Page Puncher waves interesting, because when they started doing this, for example, with the Flash wave, that was pretty much the first one where all the character designs in that just looked very different. They were not based on any existing source material. Ever since that wave, all the way to, of course, the most recent one, which is the Ghost as a Krypton wave. That was like the last time they did something like this. I love the whole redesign sort of thing going on with these figures, because it just makes it like, an excuse for them to sculpt new design figures that are not based on anything that exists. So this was a really cool initiative that they had with these Page Punchers, and it's sad to see that they're not doing any more of those sort of things anymore. So yeah, but this figure stands out a lot to me. So let's start with the head sculpt. Now, the head sculpt is kind of funny looking, because you would wonder, how does his head fit inside this, helmet, because it looks really small. I don't know, because if you look back at, like, this version right here, look at how big that helmet looks, right? Like, you can fit a human head in there, but for this one, I don't know what's going on here. So there is a little bit of a sort of quirkiness with the design. But nevertheless, you do have those big red eyes that we've seen before. You do have these details that are present on the top here that are sculpted. His neck has these details. And of course, the back part of his head sculpt has those tubings that are connected to his breathing apparatus, which, this is the most interesting part about this, is that usually for the back part, it's always like a backpack, right? Because he has to breathe underwater. He can't breathe underwater without this sort of thing. So if you look at like this version right here, you can see how it's like a ginormous backpack, because it's also connected to his jetpack sort of thing, where he can like pretty much just fly underwater, right? This one has something similar, but it's not entirely oversized. So you do have the thrusters right here on the back, but they're really tiny. And then for the breathing part, it's like this really tiny little backpack. So I like the fact that it's very minimalistic, and it just shows that the technology he's using on the suit is even more high-tech than that version, right? So I like that sort of aesthetic. And then when you come to the front part, you do have this really cool looking armor plate for his torso, which is something that you don't see a whole lot with the more original design for the character, where he's not really wearing armor. He's just wearing like a sort of spandex sort of costume with a helmet and a breathing thing. So I like the fact that this suit is just so high-tech in terms of that. So I'm assuming this sort of armor is pretty much like resistant to laser blasts. You do have this thing right here. I don't know what that exactly is supposed to be, but there's that whole sculpted detail. And you have more of just this texturing that's everywhere throughout this figure. And that is one thing that I love about the McFarlane DC line, is that whenever they started doing this sort of texturing to comic book figures in general, it just really adds more detail to the design of the figure, and it just stands out a lot more. So all these texture details are just really great to see. And then, of course, you do have his belt here. Looks like a belt, right? Yeah, it is. So he does have these little, like, canisters. I don't know what those are. They might be, like, underwater grenades, as I'm trying to speak here. So, yeah, there's that whole thing. And then his shoulders, he does have some shoulder armor with more of these red parts right here. And then looking at his arm, he does have his arm gauntlet, where his retractable blades will come out. So there's that little port that I was talking about right there, right? It's sculpted really nicely. There's the sculpting of his hands. And when it comes to the legs, you do have more armor parts down here with more of this red stuff, which I'm assuming is probably some sort of like energy thing that's part of the suit. It glows underwater, so when he's in like a darker environment, he can see in the darkness. So there's that. And he does have the little fins on the back right here with some thrusters. It would have been nice if these were painted with the same silver as you can see up there. Sadly, they're not painted, but you know, if you are a customizer, you could just do that on your own. And just more texturing on the backside. And yeah, that's pretty much all the aesthetics of this figure. It is very well sculpted and detailed with texturing, and I really like how it came out. Before we talk about the articulation though, let me just show what the arm blades look like right now. So what you do, and I'm going to show this the best I can, you take this part right here, you slide it in, right? Just make sure it goes in this way, and you just plop it in there. Now, I think I'm doing it wrong. Okay, I'm doing it wrong. This way, it's this way. So it's supposed to look like this. It comes out like this. So you can do that for that arm. You can do that for this arm. Do the same thing, just align it and then just push it in. There we go. Okay, I think it's in. Yeah, all right, it's in. So that's all you have to do. And then now, this is what he looks like with those arm blades. And I think I might have... Did I mess up this side again? No, that's just what it looks like. Okay. Just be aware that the plastic for these are also very flimsy. They can warp. So if you are like keeping these on the figure, just make sure that they're not like angled upward, because you know, during the summer weather, if you just have it like this, it's going to drip down like that. So it is not the best sort of plastic material, which I don't know why they keep using soft plastic for these like weapon accessories. I don't like it at all because of just the fact that they warp. But there you have it. He has his arm blades. You can get him into some cool poses when he's like literally using these arm blades. So this is not equipped correctly, but there you go. But yeah, you get the point, right? So you can do that. Now you can do something else, which is also cool, is that you can actually have him hold the trident and also have one arm blade out. So he's using both weapons. That's basically what I'll show later. Now, let me talk about the articulation first. So let's start with the head sculpt. He can look up, and not exactly the best because he's literally running into the back part of his neck. He can look down, really good. He can turn his head left and right with no problems. Now, of course, these tubings are connected to his head sculpt, so you do want to be careful with that. He can tilt his head side to side. So articulation for the head sculpt, man, I'm just fumbling today, is pretty decent when it comes to the movement, except for looking up. That is quite unfortunate because he can't. Yeah, can he look up? No, he can't. Yeah, so he doesn't want to look up. So if you want to get him into a swimming pose, basically what you have to do here is you kind of have to angle his head upward a little bit, and you just have to do it like this. That is not the greatest way to... I mean, that is a way to swim, I guess, right? Maybe. So there's that. So you're going to have to use the torso and the waist to make it look like he's swimming. Now, in terms of his articulation for his arms, he can spread them up this way, which is as far as it goes up like this. He can swing them back and forth all the way. He also has double jointed in the arms. He does have a bicep swivel up here. And of course, his butterfly joints, if you want to use these, but they don't really work as butterfly joints. He does have the swivel in the hands and articulation in the wrists. So there are the arms. His torso has a really good leaning forward. That is the best ab crunch I've ever seen from a Mcfarlane DC figure. That's as low as it goes, but it's better than most figures can ever do this sort of thing. Leaning backwards, not the best, unfortunately, if you're not using the waist, of course. Rotation, really stiff, but it does rotate, and, you know, you can do all of this kind of movement, so not too bad. In terms of the waist rotation down here, it does move. It can lean forward a little bit, not the best, but when it comes to leaning back, that's how you're going to get that nice leaning back motion to make him look like he's swimming. And for his leg articulation, he can kick up. Not the best, but, you know, still can kick better than some figures. I guess, yeah, it's okay. And then when it comes to his double jointed, he does have that as well. He does have the articulation in the feet, swivel, and toe articulation. Right? Oh, yeah, he does have toe articulation. Oh, it's really freaking stiff. There you go. It does work. Man, for a second, I thought he didn't have toe articulation because they've been doing that sometimes with some figures where they don't even have toe articulation, which is really strange. In terms of his die swivel, he does not have any because it's so, you know, it's frozen, so it doesn't move. Doing the splits, not bad. So, articulation for this figure is all right. It's not the worst, but it's also not the best, but it will still get the job done for certain action poses that you want him to be in. So there you have it. Now let me get him equipped with one of these swords, and I'm going to have him hold his trident or spear, whatever you want to call that. There you go. So there's that weapon. Here's this one. Let me see if I can do this on the camera. There we go. Goes right into his hand just like that. Doesn't really stay in his hand in the best way possible, though, unfortunately. There we go. Just put him right there. And there you have Black Manta with his accessories. And I really like how this came out. So, now let's have him compared to the other Black Manta. Let me bring him in. Here is the Black Manta from the Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom movie. Accessories are falling off. Hopefully he stands. And as you can see, they look very different, right? This is more kind of like comic book based, where it's like that version that most people are familiar with. This is like a reimagining of the character. That's how I describe this. And they don't look bad next to each other. I still like both of these figures for how they turned out. So there's this comparison. Now, in terms of this particular figure, there is another version of him that exists that is basically a repaint. It is a line art edition repaint. Now, I can't compare the two of them together on this table because I have that figure, but I've never taken it out of the box. There it is. There is what he looks like with the black and white paint, right? That's basically what he looks like there. And for the comic book, the reason why I never unboxed this was because the comic book image, you might have seen this before because it was once part of the display here for the back of where my review station is. It's literally a black and white photo of all four of the characters. Really cool artwork here, and I just felt like, you know what, I don't want to damage this comic book. Like, it seems very unique here with this artwork, so I want to just keep this in the box. So that's why I never took this figure out. But it's essentially just a repaint of this guy, black and white. So yeah, that's pretty much the differences. Everything else is pretty much the same. It's the same sculpt, same everything. So yeah, and that's gonna do for today's review for this Black Manta figure. If you found today's video enjoyable, give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.